If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like us to continue putting out regular quality content, head over to patreon.com/aircrew interview, where you can donate monthly, and in return you will get rewards ranging from early interview viewings, bonus clips, credited as a producer, and much more. Thank you and enjoy. Okay, Kip, this is from James. How did it feel on your last day flying the Jaguar?
Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because it's you're obviously giving up a massive part of your life. So it was kind of a bit weird, tinged with sadness really, because it was the time when I was also retiring from the air. I did half a dog's watch, so I only did 12 years, but I spent probably a good decade of that continuously flying. And I was in Oman as well, so I got the usual send off from the squadron, and then a whole bunch of leaving dues where we all got drunk and stuff. So it was it wasn't a triumphant sort of occasion. It was really kind of saying goodbye to everybody. So tinged with a little bit of sadness more than anything, but actually it was a decision I'd made, so I can't grumble about it. And I am where I am now, and I enjoyed my time in the Air Force, but it was, at the time, I would either leave the Air Force and go and do something else, potentially more interesting. I could stay in Oman and do another year, 2, 3, 4, but that time if I'd have done another years, that's 6 same job, which is probably too much, boredom efficient. Back to the UK and potentially sit in a sim job, back to Valley and do the same job I was doing before. None of them really floated my boats. So I decided to leave. So, would you buy a Jaguar Warbird if available? Would I buy a Jaguar Warbird? I might be interested in one, but difficult really. I think we'd struggle in the UK. The CAA regulation comes in as a complex area, so trying to keep them flying is actually pretty hard. There was some chat a while ago about potentially getting a T2 or a T4 back up and running, but it never came to anything, unfortunately. Let's have a look. What type did you want to fly before joining the RAF change during flying training? Good question. I always liked the American gear, 15 Eagles, 16s, stuff like that. I always loved the A10, always have done. I mean, what's not to like about, however, like hundreds of hard points, and the whole thing built around a massive gun. That's pretty much heaven. If only it was a bit faster, it'd be, but perfect for what it does. Did you ever land on a motorway in the mag, or do any off the runway landings? No. I know what you're talking about. I have seen the test pilot getting airborne off the grass, but unfortunately, you need to be pretty light for that kind of stuff. I know in Oman actually they had sections of the motorway through the water in Oman, which is it's like a 8.5-hour drive from Salalah to Muscat. So there's literally one road that carves up through the middle of the country. And I know sections of that were happily long enough to land should we ever need to. But thumb rate was 11,000-ish feet long. So why would I ever want to land on a motorway? That was kind of Harris stuff, really. Did you prefer to fly the Jag or the Hawk? Jag. Just because, and it was great fun, because it was, it was maneuverable. You could maintain 4 to 5 G. If you're in a if you're in a high G spiral from 20,000 whatever, you could hold, you know, your 7-8 G quite, which the Jag really couldn't do. But then again, I remember my first solo coming back to the Hawk after a tour on the Jags, and I got airborne and tootled off, did some low level, climbed up to height, did some aerobatics, and then I went, right, what else can I do? I'll just go and I'll do some close air spot. Oh no, I'll go and bootleg a tanker. Oh no, you can't. No, and there's no toys on it, so it's changed now with the new Hawk, but there's still not a huge amount you can do. The Jag was much more fun, far more demanding, but much more fun because you could do a whole load more with it. Tank Buster for the Amiga. Oh, now you're talking. Did I ever visit Warden? No, I didn't. No, never, unfortunately. I think we went to Denmark once, and that was with our exchange officer, just so that he could sort out his house before he left. But that was it. We never really went that far overseas other than Turkey when we were on ops. Minimum runway for a Jag? Yeah, good question. Probably, obviously depends on the fit. If you're clean, no jugs, pylons are off, super lightweight, you could probably get away with 6,000 feet, I think, from memory. But yeah, you needed a long one. If we were total plus, so we had 2 big bags, maybe 1,000-pounder on board, in thumb rate in the summer, you'd need 9,000 to 10,000 feet of the 11,000 foot runway. Yeah, pretty sporty. No, sorry, Eric. I was never, despite my looks, I was never old enough to fly in RAF Germany. I mean, I was in RAF Germany, but as a kid, because my dad was a Buccaneer pilot, and my mum was in air traffic. So, you know, I was pretty much cursed to join the Air Force from the word go with my parentage. So actually I spent a few years at RAF Larbrook, but I was knee high to a grasshopper. So, but unfortunately never flew out of there really. If you could rejoin the Air Force, what would you be interested in flying? Yeah, F-35 really. Maybe the Typhoon, but probably the F-35. But to be honest, I wouldn't really fit in, I don't think. I think, yeah, I've been out too long really to be a viable pilot anymore. I know mates of mine have got left, done a few years out, and then gone back in. But yeah, no, not for me, I don't think. Vlad Raptor 5. I have a really important question. Then go ahead. Yeah, John Ellis. Wow. Yeah, you're not wrong. What sort of watch did you wear when flying? I'm sorry to say, a G-Shock. It was a G-Shock Solar with the Wave Scepter, purely because every morning you'd have a time hack. And you could always tell the guys with Breitlings and posh watches because they were always fanning around with the knobs and the dials trying to get it to, because they'd lost so much time overnight or getting so much time. Whereas the G-Shock, it syncs every night with the Wave Scepter and, you know, it's spot on. So, yeah, eventually the G-Shock became almost the weapon of choice for us Hawk guys. And afterwards, you know, when I went back to the Jag, it was spot on. So, yeah, it takes a fair old amount of abuse. So I'm sorry to say for your sponsor, Mike, that it's a G-Shock only, I'm afraid.
No, we can live with that.
Yeah, okay. Martin, how did the Jag perform in DACT versus the Hunter? We never did versus the Hunter, unfortunately. I suspect it would have lost. The Hunter was a pretty good bit of kit. My dad flew the Hunter a lot. He's got, you know, because he was in the Buccaneer, the Hunter they had a twin-seat Hunter because they had no 2-stick bucks. They had to practice and teach the pilots in the twin-stick Hunter. But I know the single-seat Hunter was fairly pokey. I mean, DACT against almost any in the Jag was a bit of a joke. because we had a tiddly little wing. We were pretty underpowered. The only way you tended to survive was literally by being the sneakiest son of a whatever it is out there and trying to sneak through, getting as low to the ground as possible, and generally scaring the air defenders so they didn't want to come down to the weeds with you. That's the only thing you could do, really. Although, to be honest, air combat in Oman was pretty sporty because we were allowed to do air combat down to 150 feet AGL. And if you got the constituted pair correctly, so essentially the more experienced guys, you could be cleared for OLF as well, and operational low flying was down to 50 feet. So you could merge at 50 feet at, the best part of 500 knots each. And then after the merge, you then go up to 150 feet to fight. But then if you split from the fight, you could then drop down to 50 feet and run away at whatever VNE was, and before you ran out of fuel, which, given the total only load without bags on, was about 20 to 25 minutes of combat. To do Jaguar, Harrier, or A7? Probably BAI. Yeah, good question. Probably Jaguar A7, I think. Kaz, probably the Harrier. I hate to say it. Just because it had such a good mixed load, I would say. Less so for the BAI because it was a bit slow. Everybody takes the mickey out of the Jag, but at least if you wanted to, you could drop everything and run away supersonic at low level. What makes an aircraft good for low level? As in, there are certain characteristics and designs, and what are they? Lots of fuel, big engines. Low level's a tough one because if you've got a fairly low wing loader, then turbulence really gets you. Whereas a high wing loader like the Jag, you could go out and you barely used to feel anything, but then your turn radius is compromised. I know the Buccaneer, because my dad flew it, was awesome at low level. They could pretty much go everywhere at 580 knots, carrying 8,000 pounders in the belly because they didn't have the drag. The Bombay was streamlined. If you've got a Bombay, that's a winner. Tornado was pretty good, but it was a bit of a dragmeister. And again, the Tornadoes used to go from 16,000 pounds of thrust dry to 32,000 pound in full blower. I think you talk to most Tornado guys, they would have happily given up a little bit of the top end, as it were, in the blower range. So more dry and slightly less burner. Because the burner, I think they used to kick through 700 kgs a minute or something when they were in full blower. Paul, did I do red flag? No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I did maple flag. We did maple flag, which was good fun. But I never did red flag, unfortunately. But I missed red flag by a hair's breadth, unfortunately. Do you do any expeditionary deployments or steer bases like the USMC? No, essentially because, I hate to say it, the Jag was a bit crap and needed a long runway. So, we needed somewhere with a big runway, and obviously a big runway means that it's generally not austere. So, we didn't really do much of that. And thank God they decided not to stick it on a carrier. Martin, I read there are only 2 rules: don't fly on the Sultan's Palace and don't screw up. Pretty much. I know that was the bad old days. There were a few more. Certainly when the F-16 came in, they started getting a bit touchy about everybody dropping boomers everywhere. 150 feet AGL was our standard tooling around height. And that was day and night. So you do NVGs at 150, and then and then during the day, if you were correctly constituted, 50 feet. You don't fly over the Sultan's Palace or the Sultan's Farms. You'd end up with a 24-hour posting back home. Yeah, hard deck. Yeah, there is no hard deck in Oman, quite literally. Larger intakes optimized for low-level flight as opposed to high-altitude and high-speed flight. Yeah, good question. I'm not really an aerodynamicist. The intakes, the intake shape is really the biggest thing. So that if you are going to go supersonic, you don't want the shock wave hitting the, you don't want the shock wave propagating into the face of the engine. Otherwise, you're disrupting the air, and it causes all kinds of problems, as far as I'm aware. Friendly banter regarding the Buck and the Jag. Yeah, absolutely. He's just your average two-seat loser, and I'm a single-seat muppet who used to fly a underpowered two-seat, underpowered single-seat, trainer. So yeah, constant banter, but also a bit, a lot of mutual respect there as well. I mean, he's got 6,000 hours, and he flew Canberras in Germany. The Nat, JPs as an instructor. What else did he fly? Obviously the Hunter. He's got some Hunter time, and single seat Hunter as well. Buccaneer for some time, and then he flew the Tornado, and then he was the GR1 when they took over Tiled. So Tiled first came out in Gulf War One. So yeah, there's a fair amount of work that he's done that I just didn't. Plus, he's got generally, I think once you're up around once you've got to 2,000 hours plus, I'm not saying you're as good as you're going to get, because you always get better. But those guys with thousands and thousands of hours, and is it Oki, the guy you're going to be interviewing with?
Yeah, it is.
The most hours on the F-14 and stuff like that. I mean, respect, because the guy's obviously a bit of a legend. I mean, he's standing like a legend in the photo.
Yeah, it's a brilliant pose, that, isn't it?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good fighter pilot pose.
It definitely is.
But yeah, there's always banter. There's always banter between squadrons of the same type, between different types, between different air bases. So unfortunately, it seems like fuel for the Air Force and for all aviators is banter, really. But yeah. Was a Jag an easy jet to maintain? Was it more difficult to look after as it got older? It was actually very serviceable. You'd need to talk to the ground guys, really, but compared to the Tornado, there was less electric string. It wasn't all computer says yes, computer says no. I mean, I know for the Jag, we used to walk with about 30 minutes from the outbrief. So from the authorizer's desk to airborne was about 30 minutes. I know, talking to the guys at the Typhoon, they leave an hour, because sometimes the computer says no, and then they have to shut it all down, fire it all up again, and it's just a bit of a pain. And the Tornado was pretty atrocious in terms of maintenance. More difficult to look after as it got older? I don't think so. Other than fatigue issues, which we never really suffered, unlike the Buccaneer, which had some horrendous fatigue problems later in its life. No, the Jag seemed to be pretty reliable, to be honest. Kit, if there was an era in history you could have flown the RAF, when would it have been, and what aircraft would you have liked to have flown? Yeah, good question. I temper that, because I know that, well, speaking to my dad, when he first turned up in the 60s to his flying training bases, you were given weeks of pallbearer duty. So that's how bad it was back in the 60s and 70s. So it's, your fatality rates were much, much higher. If I could avoid that, then, yeah, difficult. I'd love to have flown the Spit, obviously for obvious reasons. But I don't think any of the other sort of Cold War era jets or post-war jets really floated my boat, to be honest. And certainly the accident rates would have scared me off flying anything else. But yeah, if I could have flown a Spitfire back in the day, yeah, that would have been amazing. But obviously, again, death rates are pretty high. What else? Meh, I prefer the Jag over the Harry. Yeah, doesn't everybody? Paul Barrett, did you ever manage to do any air-to-air with the Yanks? If so, what was the outcome? Yeah, we did some air-to-air with the F-16s. Generally, we got our asses handed to us. Even 2v1, 2 Jags v1, we did that out in Turkey. But we flew with jugs on, and it's like clubbing baby seals in many ways. We're not an air combat platform. She would handle very badly if you over alphaed her. There was a serious risk of departure if you were cack-handed. So normally we'd avoid DACT. You could do it, but generally you used to get spanked. Seen A37B Dragonfly, what do you think of that jet? No, A37B, sorry, no, I'll have to Google that one. Let me just, I'm just going to see if I can find A37B. Oh, come on. There we go. Yeah, let me see if I can find some of those. Ethan, other than it being underpowered, what else was wrong with the Jag? What was it like to fly? Because it seemed like it was an incredible aircraft. Yeah, too long. So it's too long. Weight distribution was all wrong. Tiddly little wings. So what they call the B over A ratio, which is the amount of I'm just trying to think how to describe it. In a spin, if you depart the aircraft, there's the gyroscopic forces fighting the aerodynamic forces, and in the Jag it was all wrong, and it was certainly in the T-Bird, because the T-Bird was 6 feet longer, it was irrecoverable. They had to put a specialist spin chute on it. So and the was when you pulled too much alpha, the canopy would blank the tail fin, and then you'd lose aerodynamic you'd lose directional control and stability. It would give you plenty of warning, and she'd start shaking her head, but then obviously as she shakes sort of to the right, you then sweep the right wing more, and then you decrease the sweep on the left wing, so you get a little bit more lift, and then she'll start to really wallow, and if you keep pulling, then she'll depart. And several jets have been lost in air combat because guys have had the alpha warner set incorrectly. The cockpit was an ergonomic slum. I know they had, when she first came out, they had the NavWAS down between your legs, so that I never flew that, by the way. That was in the early days. But the NavWAS was you literally take your hand and you have to shove it between your legs and look down to see where you were plugging things in. So of course, guys were leaning forwards on the stick, and they had several guys hit the ground. I think there was one guy hit a cliff because he just nosed in, and as he was coasting in. I think by the time I hit the jet, most of those things had been ironed out, but still she was an evil handling, or could be an evil handling pig, especially with anything on the center line. You were limited sometimes to 12 alpha with a jug on the center line. So, quite unpleasant sometimes. Once you knew how to fly her, and that took probably a good year at least, you were fine. Because she would tell you if she was grumbling and she was getting close to the edge. But yeah, for the uninitiated, you could easily screw it up. It was an incredible aircraft. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, it was great to fly, but like I say, just underpowered. Japanese T2 F1 Jaguar knockoff fared to its Euro counterpart. I'm surprised they actually went down the trainer route, which is called Scrap and Jag. I'm surprised they went down that route. The Jag was always destined to be a trainer, and I mean, thank God they didn't. We'd have piled students in left, right, and centre all across Wales, because she was so bad handling at the extremes. So I'm very surprised that the T2 F1 sort of knockoff I know that the Indians have got the Howl Jaguar, which I know they've tried to boost with various, spangly toys, but deep down it's still ultimately a flawed design, being as it's so long with a tiddly little wing. Where am I? Sorry, Adam. I've always been fascinated by the daily routine on Squadron. Do you have tea breaks and an hour's lunch? Yeah, no, not at all. You would have, well, I'm just trying to think. You normally have an early met at maybe 7 or 7:30, and then a squad. I think there was an early met, and then there was a main met at 8ish, and then after that, if you had some spare time, you used to do secondary duties, or you used to do other work, or just generally get your head in the books. And then when the planning cycle hit, it was normally about 2.5 hours to take off when the planning cycle started, unless you were doing something complex. Then you'd fly for an hour and a half, or if you had a tanker, 2.5 hours, and you come back down. Then you'd have 20 minutes just to gather your thoughts, and then you'd have a half hour, maybe more debrief, but never that long. I mean, we're not like the air defenders who used to sit there and draw out every point and every shot log and all the rest of it. I mean, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than sitting through an air defence brief. If I'm going to hell, it's going to be one long air defence brief. There was no such thing as a lunch hour. If you grabbed it when you could, normally, you'd have a gopher, or you'd have a holding pilot, and you'd give them if you're flying twice a day, that's pretty much an 8 to 9 hour cycle that you're stuck in. So you don't really have time. So you just used to keep yourself hopped up on caffeine and whatever food you could get your hands on. Wasn't much groaning about pay and so on. Certainly not when I was in. I think there is more now because they've changed the rules on flying pay and all the rest of it. And there's a lot more BS, I think, that goes on. Talking to my mates now, I love my time in. They could have probably paid me half what I was on, and I still would have done the job because it was hilarious fun. So, Craig Boy 978, did the RF change update the mark of the Jag? What were the main differences if they did? Yeah, they went from GR1 to GR3, and then the 3A, and the update was mostly software. So they added GPS, terrain reference navigation, and the 3A had you had an AMLCD, a small one, I think. I think the 3 still sometimes had the old microfilm circular map. But then the 3A, they had the big telly with the active matrix liquid crystal display that you had various approach plates and all kinds of stuff on. And they went from the T1 to the T2 to the T4. And again, that was a similar thing. Mostly just software updates. They did upgrade the engines from the old 102s, which apparently were even worse than the 104s, if that was even possible. And then eventually they went to the 106s, but the 106s were dreadful. And they were, they were having titanium fires, and they were spitting blades and all kinds of stuff because they'd taken the Adore literally to the design limit for such a tiddly little engine. In that respect, mostly software, and being able to, the odd smart pylon and stuff, but no huge differences. John Ellis, the attack version of the T-37. The Tweet. Oh God, yeah, it's a bit like a Strike Master. I've flown a Tweet. I flew a Tweet in the States when I was about just trying to think, 22-ish? No, crikey, 18. No, 21. At the end of my university air squadron, I flew the Tweet. So a bit like a Strikey. I think it's a bit old school, to be honest. Probably not. Probably not the greatest choice, I would have thought. Did I ever consider going for the Reds? Yeah, I did, and I flew with them a couple of times from the boot, which was great fun. Unfortunately, I do a lot of shooting. I'm a rifle shooter, and I've represented GB and England several times. I've been on tour to Canada and Australia with Great Britain. I do long range rifles, so 300 to 1,000 yards, open sights, sling, all that kind of good stuff. And unfortunately, the main season for shooting is when the Reds are doing their Carlos Fandango displays. So I kind of made the decision that actually it wasn't for me. I would pick one or the other because on the front line or at Valley, I could do them all. And certainly in Oman, I could just go, I'm going away for 2 or 3 weeks, and they go, yeah, fine, and off we go. I enjoyed I enjoyed flying with the Reds. It was hilarious fun. Yeah, it wasn't really for me, I don't think. Martin, do you think the planned big wing Jag upgrade developed in the 80s would have resulted in better all-round aircrafts? Again, I think the Jag was fatally flawed from the outset. I think they did look at re-engineering at some point, but you're talking about such a massive engineering job. I mean, yeah, if you want to re-wing it, fine, but then you've still got to push that weight around. You've still got to turn, and if you've still got two piddly little asthmatic engines, you're always going to be up against it, I think. Sorry, I'm just losing my place here. What was the biggest weapons you could hang off the Jag? Paveway 3. You could hang one of those on the center line, I think. I think you could hang one on possibly on one of the inboards. Yeah, I think you could hang them on the inboard as well, but I'm not sure. But yeah, Paveway 3 was the biggest. Mark 102 engines. As far as I'm aware, the 102s and 104s were pretty reliable. I very rarely had problems with them. And because there was no sort of FADEC or anything, you could kind of get around any start problems they had with just a little bit of throttle and, waiting until you advance the HP cock and stuff like this. So, unfortunately, the 102s were just massively underpowered. I never flew with them, thank God. I only ever flew with 104s and 106s. So, yeah, they were pretty reliable, and as was the Jag in general, really.
Just to interrupt you there quickly, Kip, I'm just going to tell everyone we're going to go until 8 o'clock, if you're fine with that, Kip.
Yeah, that'll be fine. No problem at all. Combat like against helicopters in the Jag. We didn't really do it, essentially because we had a turning radius the size of Norfolk. So you needed something a little bit more maneuverable against helicopters. And from what I understand, if you saw a helicopter and you could fly over the top of it, all you used to do was just fly over the top of it as fast and as low as you could and then pull up. I mean, if you could go supersonic over the top, that's great, because then you'd get the shock wave through the blades. And I think, having never done it, but the air defenders were saying that that's another way to kill them if you can't get a decent shot off. But yeah, we never used to do it because, you'd see them, you'd turn around and then you come back again and you go, where the hell are they gone? So it was a bit of a waste of our time, really, and of theirs, because really you're both trying to get something out of it. And if neither party gets anything out of it, it's kind of useless training, really. Mike, how you doing? If a Fast Jet Force in your day was a band, what was the lead singer, lead guitarist, bass player, and drummer, including someone playing with Northern Summer? Yeah, we were AC/DC. Yeah, the Jag Force was a really good force to be part of. Everybody, there was very little infighting, and 99% of the people on the Jag Force were good eggs. They were really good lads. There was the odd one who was a bit of a, there's always one, but most of them were just really good guys, even on the other squadrons. But yeah, totally AC/DC. Yeah, well, the air defenders get yeah, James. And you just get patches for formation flying. Well, that's kind of all they do, really, because they don't do a proper job. Sorry, this question, but where in the world, UK, did you fly the Jag? What was the most impressive and enjoyable? Yeah, mostly Europe. Obviously, Oman. Flew Alaska, Canada. Never really flew in the States to any great extent. I loved flying in the Middle East. That was great fun, essentially because the rules were so lax. You know, snorting around at 50 foot was brilliant fun over the desert. Alaska was, we went there for Cope Thunder. That was pretty sporty because it was you're 5,000 feet up in places, and it was a bit more demanding, and the weather could turn like that. So that was great fun, but certainly a little bit more demanding if the weather was cack. And now James play nice. Yeah, absolutely, Paul. What was the autopilot in the Jag? Yeah, it didn't have one. So that's that one answered. What engines did have been more suitable for the Jag? No idea. Something with more power, really. I know they looked at re-engineering it, but the trouble is when you start getting into stuff like that, bigger frames, whole rear end redesign, you may as well just scrap it and buy second-hand F-16s and upgrade the, the software and the kit on board. You got a far more capable jet there. Did the Jag have any aerobatic capability? And was there ever a time when flying it just chuck around the sky purely for fun of it? There used to be the 16 Squadron, the OCU used to run the display. But again, because it used to have a turn radius the size of Norfolk, it was just never that amazing. You see the Typhoons and Rafales and, the modern day Russian stuff. And that's impressive. One high speed pass with a Jag and you got to wait 5 minutes for it to turn around and come back again. But yeah, I mean, we used to fly it. We used to do aerobatics in it purely because it was a good lead into air combat. If you're going to roll over and pull through, you've got to know the limitations of the aircraft. So yeah, we did just for the fun of it every once in a while. Speaking of long range shooting and rifle, we use essentially 308 Martin 762 by 51. It's really the only thing that we're allowed to, that is commonly used in target rifle in the UK. You can do F class, which is like free class, where you're allowed bigger calibers and you make your own bullets and all this kind of BS. But yeah, we just use 308. But it's really the choice of barrel and the twist in the barrel and the choice of action that kind of makes a difference, really. So yeah, 308, and I use a quad lock. In fact, I've got two quad locks which are made by RPA. They're pretty good. They shoot better than I do, so I've got no reason to change them. Let me see. I did hear a rumor that in the 90s the RF was going to do the F-16 to replace the Jag. Oh hell yeah, yeah. If they'd have replaced the Jag with the F-16, yeah, I'd probably still be in today. Yeah, it's far more capable jet. It's got an AI radar. It's single seat. It can turn right up its own bum hole, and it can carry far more than the Jag could. So yeah, it's a lovely jet. The Vigan guidance system to Jag use radar ground fixes updates. The only ground fixes that we used initially would be through the Laser Ranger. So you'd have a pre-planned fix with a lat long against it, and it would come up in your head-up display, and then you'd fire the laser at it, and that would give you you'd then move. So it would come up. You could then move where the fix cross was to where it was supposed to be through your head-up display, and then you'd fix, and that would update the inertial nav system. But the thing was, with terrain reference navigation and GPS, it was all blended together, and you didn't need to fix. The thing was accurate to a few meters. Hey, I won't have anything said about Norfolk. It's a great place to be. What was the funniest, dumbest reason someone got reprimanded for? Yeah. In flying training, well, I don't know what the limit of statutes is on that, but somebody got reprimanded for. Oh, the dumbest thing was a guy who qualified. I think he was a Kiwi. He came from the Skyhawk, and he went to do air combat. And because of the way the Jag fuel system is, if you burn down too much and didn't allow the wing tanks to feed in, the wing and the drop tanks to feed into the center tanks, you could essentially lose all. You wouldn't be able to get to the fuel in the drops and the wings. And essentially, he didn't pay any attention to that and almost flamed out over the North Sea. He pretty much had to glide back in using minimal fuel. Yeah, that's one of the dumbest ones I've seen, because it's well known, and they just fought for too long, and the air pressure that you use to transfer from the drops into the centres can't keep up, so you do have to stop every once in a while, and they just didn't. They just kept fighting, and this guy, ended up almost flaming out and almost cost us a jet. So yeah. F404 small factor engines, yeah, possibly. It still requires a huge amount of redesign, plus you've then got to think, well, if I've uprated the engines, they're obviously burning more, so you then reduce your endurance potentially. I think they looked at all the options and just decided it just really wasn't worth it, and that's why we ended up with the 106s, which were uprated doors to give a little bit more thrust. But to be honest, by that time, I think the Jag had reached the end of its useful life in many ways, and it was it was going to be phased out anyway. Each Jag have its own flying performance characteristics. Not all of them, but some of them were known as rocket ships, and some of them were known as pigs. We had one called one was Golf Charlie, and I remember it to this day because it was an absolute slug. They ripped the engines out of that thing so many times and bench tested them that they, because they thought there was something wrong with it. And they took the engines out, tested them, they tested fine, put them back in Golf Charlie, and she was a total pig. So, yeah. But you sometimes had a rocket ship and you sometimes had a pig. It's just the way it was, really. F-16, 15 longevity over the totally ease of upgrading. You can take the donk out of the 16 and you can upgrade it, and then you can take the black boxes out and you can upgrade those for more stuff. I think that more modular ability has meant that they can stay current and stay ahead of the game, really. Do you think the F-35 Typhoon will do much low level? No, not really. They'll do it just to stay current, because it's a real skill. Just ask the air defenders; they don't like doing low level. None of the air defenders at Valley like doing low level, because it used to scare them. Funking around in really punk weather, that's a real skill. But I think they don't really need to. They've got a big old radar. They can sweep their way in at medium level, drop a PGM on GPS, and then come home. There's no real need to snort around and put yourself in danger with, low-level sound systems. Yeah, I think we've had this one. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard, sad walking away. Yeah, definitely. Because not only that, I was stepping out of the Air Force as well. So not only will you never fly a fast jet again, but you're also out of the system as well. So you kind of institutionalized, and you've now got to make it in the real world. So yeah, it was definitely tough. How advanced was the HMS? Not particularly. It was fairly basic, but it was really useful. You could slew the 9 Lima head. Mostly useful for air-to-ground CAS as well. So if you're doing CAS, and if you couldn't see it, the HMS would guide you in. But it was pretty basic, but it definitely had its uses. It's old hat now. You could slew the 9 Lima, you could slew the Vicon pod, you could use it to take a regress. So if you saw something on the ground, you could look at it and you could hit a regress, and it would take a lat long of what you were looking at, give or take. That's pretty much all, actually. What can you put on top of the wing? Yeah, winders. Fuel tanks were the Lightning. But yeah, you could stick winders on there. That was the only place for the UK they'd have overwing allows. No worries. Sabre 22, an FA-18F had a hard transfer issue after a botched refueling flamed out 2 miles before the carrier. Oh, stinger. Yeah, no, totally. Fuel is a basic. I was pretty paranoid about it, to be honest, and it served me well through my time. As you say, the Jag was underpowered. Would have been better from the start with a big single afterburner engine such as a Spey. Yeah, potentially, but then you're in a single engine, and you're in a single engine machine. I know people joke about the Jag saying, if one engine goes, it's okay because the other one will take you to the crash site. But at least you've got another one. You can stay airborne on a single engine. But if you've only got a single engine and it goes, you're boned. So most guys, given the option of 1 or 2 engines, would take 2. If the option is there for 3, they'd have 3. That's a pilot thing. If it was possible from a standing start, Lightning Mark 1 or Typhoon to win the climbing race. I think Typhoon, to be honest. It's got a bigger wing. It's phenomenal. It is my guess, I would say. Plus, you've got, 40 years of development, I think. Ethan, other than Jag, what other aircraft you've flown? What was best to fly? Let's see, I've flown the Tweet, I've flown the Talon, the T-38, but that was before I'd really gone through flying training, so I couldn't really comment. Obviously, I flew the Hawk as instructor. The Tucano was a dog. Flew the Bulldog, which was hilarious. So really, the only things, I've flown a Tornado. From the back, which is a big old bus, actually. Good fun, lots of gear, but again, 2 people. So yeah, the Hawk, if you just want to snort around at low level and pull lots of G, the Hawk is the best one for it. But if you actually want to go and do something, and I enjoyed the Jag because it was demanding. And I liked all the things you could do with it. Eventually, it was quite a capable jet. Not as capable as a lot of the modern stuff, but you're taking quite an old jet, poor performing, and you're trying to make it do better things, which made it more demanding in many ways. And I think, like I said before, I think it had reached the end of its evolution. It was going to go out anyway. Yeah, the USMC Harrier pilot retired and brought his own Sea Harrier surplus fluid. He couldn't stay away for too long. I haven't. He's obviously got money to burn if he wants to fly a Sea Harrier. But did you have to roll inverted when firing winders? Nope, absolutely not. You could slew them with the HMS. I fired at a Jindy on APC out of Valley, and I was firing over to the left, and the winder was on the right. So this thing got the growl. You fox 2, and time slows down because you hit the tit, and you go, "Oh, it hasn't gone. I wonder what." And then this thing launches off like a scolded cat, goes forward, I don't know, 1,000 feet, and then takes a hard left in front of you. So yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I think there were some G limits, but really the big thing with the flare pack was just making sure you had the growl and the tone on the flare pack and not on the Jindy. They lost enough drones that way. Craigie Boyce 978 was a Jag ever equipped for the atomic roll? Yes, it was. But that was phased out. They did have what they used to call special weapons, but fortunately that was phased out before I ever got there. Which thank God, because dealing with nukes apparently, was a nightmare. You always used to have live armed guards, and if you did something wrong, they'd be pointing a weapon in your face. It's like, that's way too much stress for me. No worries. Hughes J, 1975. What was up with the Tucano? Oh God, it was built by the Irish to a cost and not a quality. It was just a dreadful machine. I mean, nice in some respects, because it had 1,200 horsepower turboprop, so you had loads of power. But it was just not. I don't think any two were the same. And I didn't like the slipstream as well. As you're trundling down the runway, start off loads of grunt, and the slipstream is very tightly wound, and then as you accelerate, the slipstream stretches like a spring, so it then starts to send you one way with the rudder, so you have to trim one way, and then it goes the other way, and so all the way down the runway you're kind of playing with a rudder trim. And I understand that the RAF paid to take out the auto rudder trim, so it's like, oh my God, because they just want to make life difficult for the students. Never mind. Do you think the need for two engines is somewhat less now? F-35 is a lot more reliable and damaging older engines. Yeah, possibly. The newer engines are, more reliable, but still, if you take a big bird down the front, you're still not going anywhere fairly quickly other than out the canopy. I know you can PFL an F-16, but you've got to be in the right space in order to do it. Possibly. Have I read Jaguar Boys? I don't think I have, to be honest. I need to. I probably should get that one, actually. See if it makes any sense to me. Martin, if the Cold War was ever to go hot, where would you have diverted after weapons delivery, and what weapons delivery profiles would you have used? Good question. I mean, mostly that was Germany. Those were the Germany squadrons, and if they were carrying special weapons, I don't think they actually had a return base plan. Certainly not talking to my dad. He said, it was go over there. Normally, if you're going to release something like that, it would be a TOS profile or a loft, because you want to be able to oik it and throw it as far as possible, and then get the hell out of Dodge before the thing goes banag. The legendary Tucano, jet-like handling, or B, not at all. Yeah, totally. Do you do any flying today? Yeah, bizarrely, I fly auto gyros, and I'm an instructor on gyros. I fly out to Western near Silverstone, but I'm talking to a bunch of guys involved in sensors and anti-poaching as well at the moment. So potentially Africa, but also looking at maybe coastal patrols for illegal fishing and stuff like that. I think is a place where gyros might be useful. And I mean, it doesn't get more raw than a gyro in many ways. It's it really is stick and rudder type stuff. It's kind of fun. And I won't be instructing forever because I want to go on and do different things. But that's pretty much it. But I will be getting my fixed wing CPL as well, hopefully fairly shortly. Where in the world was your favourite low level flying? I loved low flying in Oman, day or night. That was great fun. Certainly around Muscat with the Jebel Shams, places like that, essentially huge mountains, and you could snort down the little valleys. That was good fun. And Alaska was pretty awesome as well. Did you get combat in the Jag? The only combat we had was doing resonant north, so flying over Iraq doing reconnaissance. But we'd still get shot at. There was still lots of ideas of SAM traps and AAA and stuff. So yeah, it was fairly sporty. Pilot told me many years ago that some of the Tucanos were slightly different. Yeah, they with a slightly different spec. Is that? Yeah, potentially. I know that the Super Tucano, which has got all the weapons and stuff on it, was pretty spiffy. I believe we've now bought a bunch of Texans, which are going to be based at Valley, and I think they're Beechcraft, or they're a knockoff version of the PC-21, which is a pretty special machine, and it's pretty cool actually. So way better than the Tucano, which was a bit of a dog. How much is a gyro chopper license? Yeah, good question. PPL, if you've got flying experience and you've held a license already, you need 25 hours, at about 150 an hour. Can't do the maths. 2.5 plus a bit, so just under $4,000. Any work flying gyro choppers? Yeah, potentially in Africa. There's some anti-poaching stuff going on. You can't really fly commercial in the UK unless you've got your CPLG, and that's quite expensive. And there's only one aircraft, which is a C of A aircraft that you can fly, which is very expensive. You know, you're talking, I think, nearly $200,000 for the top spec version. And then sensors, we're looking at sensors, which are probably the best part of $350,000. So yeah, unless you got £500,000 kicking around, there's probably not a lot of flying to be, not a lot to be earned out of flying a gyro, unfortunately. Oh, brilliant! Just I heard people talk of it fondly. Which one was that? Probably the Tucano. Yeah. Do you think the Jaguar's role in Desert Storm has been overshadowed somewhat by the Tornado and Buccaneer? Yeah, probably. But the thing with the Jag is it can't carry very much and it can't carry it very far. Whereas Tornado's got a better weapons load. You've got a dude in the back. The Buccaneer can carry a buttload of stuff for a very long way quite fast. So, you know, the Jag's always up against it. And that's just a design. You know, they took a trainer and tried to make a frontline jet out of it. So, you know, it's unfortunately. Sorry, we're different sizes requiring ballast to correct the center. Different sizes requiring ballast to correct the center of gravity. I'm assuming that's reference fuel tanks. Ian Kamak. Yeah, you'd have to keep front and rear. So you had three. You had a center group, and then you had a fore and aft group, and then you had wings and drops as well. And you had to keep the fore and aft in balance. Otherwise, there were some handling issues that you could get. James, what are favorite multi-engine and rotary types? Oh God, you know we don't have favorite multi-engine and rotary types. You fly helicopters too? No, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm not coordinated enough. Be nice to, but you know, there's only so many hours in the day. I have flown a Super Lynx. Sat on the in the left-hand seat because a mate of mine out there was going for a test flight, and he invited me to come along. So yeah, I have flown it. Wasn't that difficult. Thanks for patrolling coastlines, fisheries, anti-poaching, well, new P8 beside doing things like that. I doubt it. I doubt the P8 will do anything environmental. The military don't really get involved in that. It's really NGOs and. Well, I mean, possibly in the UK they might do something like that for environmental protection, but unlikely because it's a very expensive asset. So unless there is a massive environmental catastrophe looming or something like that, I doubt the P8 would get involved. But there you go.
Right, okay then, Kip. I think the hour is up. So, yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining in today, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you do want to check out Kip, can you just tell us where we can find your gyro site?
Yeah, sure. It's I'll just put it up on the chat. Actually, it's on revolutiongyros.co.uk. I'm just putting the revolutiongyros.co.uk on the chat. If anybody wants to go and have a look, feel free. I do blog about some stuff about flying the gyro, and eventually, hopefully, when I've got anti-poaching stuff and things like that up, then that'll make for a slightly more interesting read. So, yeah.
And I have to say, Kip, obviously you might have seen the video, but if you get the chance to go out with Kip and the auto gyro, it's incredible. And obviously with the next Jag at the controls, you're in safe hands. So I want to thank everyone for coming up, and Kip for giving up your time. It was obviously more than enjoyable.
Cool. All right, buddy. Well, hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Right. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.